Succeeding any organization really primarily depends on having a great team. So what is it that constitutes a great team? There are many things have been written about this, and there are many theories about this, but I think that a great team, first of all, has a high level of emotional commitment. In the nonprofit world, emotional commitment is a very key element. We are not in a position where we can go out and necessarily hire all the people that we want and pay them the salaries they deserve. So we want people who have emotional commitment, and we want to make sure that it's all aligned. A great team also means that people can change roles and responsibilities based on the situation they're in. We come into a team as role players. We represent individual skills, we represent individual portions of the organization, but as a team, we really need to be able to speak for each other. I have been in situations where I have had very different types of functions reporting to me, and trying to bring the different leaders together, they would initially resist, say, no, I need to run my piece, and it's not like everybody else's piece, so leave me alone, give me the support, give me the tools, but I'm okay. And it took 1 to 2 years to get everybody to understand that they were much better off understanding what everybody else did and being able to help each other, so the team really supports everybody in what it is that they want to do. The team members also need to hold each other accountable. You need to make sure that the team itself functions not through the leader and individual team members. So as I mentioned before, part of holding each other accountable, being able to function together as one big team, it is important that everybody can speak on behalf of each other. So sometimes having one person present something on behalf of another in a team setting is a very powerful way of making sure it happens. If you have something important and your credibility is part of what makes it happen, having somebody else speak on your behalf lends a lot more credibility to your situation than you doing it yourself. It's also important that the team functions well without the leader being there. Everybody should be comfortable stepping up. The team should be empowered and should be comfortable with making decisions, even with the leader not in the room. And in order to do that, of course, it is important to select the right team players. What are the right people on the team? Mostly think about roles and responsibilities not necessarily be determined by the organization, but you want to have people who really are team players. I've said this a couple of times already, but having team players versus role players is really critical. You also need to make sure that you surround yourself with people smarter than yourself. It is very easy to say, it is something very often difficult to do. A lot of people may feel threatened if they hire somebody who is smarter than themselves, but trust me, in the long run, if you can really have people that will teach you things on an ongoing basis, you end up much better, both individually as in a team. You need to listen to people. Too often in an organization, the leader feels that it's important that the message comes from the leader, but more often than not, the team will get you a better outcome. So in a team setting, listen to the team members and understand what you're saying. I mentioned earlier that you want to have the ability to hire the right people in the nonprofit environment. It is difficult, and you really need to tap into the idealistic passions of the people. You need to, if they seek nobility of service and meaning beyond money, that is how you can attract people to a nonprofit organization. It's also very important, and it is very difficult, that the people who do not have that profile, who do not commit to the organization, who do not agree with the mission and vision, that you get them to leave the organization. So ending up with the right team is a long process of getting the commitment, getting people in that are committed, and then make sure that the people who are not committed, persuade them to leave the organization. You also want to make sure that you understand how to bring out the greatness in people who don't realize that they have it. Very often, and I think especially in the nonprofit world, a lot of people have a lot of understanding of what needs to be done, but they may not be comfortable in how to bring it out. So you need to nurture, you need to understand the greatness that people have, you need to nurture it, and you need to promote it so that if people have the right attitude, let's make sure that we bring it out and that we get that to help the organization. So Jim Collins of Good to Great fame has written about how does leadership look in a nonprofit organization. And I'm going to take a couple of the things that he says because I really think it resonates. So first of all, in a nonprofit, you manage to the mission, not to a monetary outcome. In for-profit organizations, you can measure success by what profit do you make. You cannot do that in a nonprofit. It is important that you do not measure success in fundraising or success in managing to your budget as what is it that you want your outcome to be. It is to adhere to the mission. So you need to make sure you understand that, and you need to make sure that that is what you manage to on an ongoing basis. Very often, you need to understand how to deal with ambiguity. We have a lot of situations, again, I keep bringing up the example of no-kill. No-kill means a lot of different things to different people, and you need to understand that ambiguity, and you need to make sure how do you get people to follow when they don't have to. Again, you can't pay people to do what they want them to do. You have to have a shared mission, and you have to persuade people based on that. You need to find ways to face what Jim Collins called the brutal facts. Very often in the nonprofit world, we fall short in fundraising, we have issues in the community, we are faced with situations that are very difficult, like hoarding situations where all of a sudden we get a lot of animals coming into a shelter. You need to understand how do you face those when you don't have the resources necessarily and succeed in situations like that. You also need to understand what is it that keeps the organization going. Jim Collins calls this the flywheel. Once you get going, how do you keep that inertia? And in the nonprofit, it's really composed of time, money, and brand. So understand how do you use those and how do you keep that going on an ongoing, how do you keep perpetuating? Back to the example of fundraising, how do you get people to donate on an ongoing basis instead of having the windfalls that you can't depend on a regular basis? One very important thing in a nonprofit environment is that you need to find the discipline to make the right decisions beyond just doing good. You cannot succumb to donor pressure, or you cannot just have growth for growth's sake. It's important to build brand. I've talked about the brand before, but people such as donors want to be associated with a winner. So it's important that your brand projects success as well as what it is that you want to do with the organization. You need to build a sustainable organization, and you need to understand how to acquire funds to support that. We talked in another chapter about how you need to have a good operating model. You need to understand how you have sustainable funds on a multi-year basis. It's easy to go out and get funding for a project, and it's easy for a charismatic leader to get funds. It's much more difficult to sustain and operate on an ongoing basis. And you need to use your metrics. We talked about metrics, how important it is to use metrics internally to adjust what you do in the organization. But you also need to use your metrics to demonstrate success, both internally and externally, and to sustain an enthusiasm in the mission and the values.